Welcome to the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Ryan Van Fleet. It's been windy, so I haven't been fishing much. I've had to cancel a lot of trips, and it is what it is. It's a tough business, but you have a full calendar. I hate losing money, but I'd rather not take people when it's rough and because it's just not worth it. So today is Thursday, and I've got a patch reef fishing trip this morning. I'm leaving the dock at 9 a.m., and then tomorrow I've got a trip Saturday. I'm supposed to fish, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to fish Saturday because it looks like the front's going to roll through, and it's going to be nasty. Anytime the wind kicks up from 20 out of the southeast, it really kicks up the Hawks Channel, makes it really muddy in certain locations, and I just don't like it's a struggle. So, and it's just not worth putting the people through that. Now, everybody's asking me, well, why don't you take them shark fishing? Well, clients that book me, they're not that client, okay? So I just don't take people to take them fishing for whatever. It's just not what I do. So there's plenty of other charters down here that specialize in shark fishing and flats fishing and bridge fishing. My specialties are patch reef fishing, and offshore fishing when it's nice. So that's what I do. Okay, so if you're planning on booking me for spring break this year, March and April, you need to get your reservations in as soon as possible, okay? So please call ahead for March and April. March and April, what am I going to be doing as far as fishing goes? Okay, Yellowtail Snapper on windy days on the reef, mutton snappers. Okay, that's what I target as far as snapper-wise. No groupers, season's closed. Don't like to catch and release them because they just don't make it. We do catch some incidental on the bottom when we're mutton snapper fishing, but I try to stay away from those locations where those black groupers are at this time of year because I want them to be ready for the month of May. So, and which goes with the month of May, you better make your reservations for the month of May early. But anyways, I get ahead of myself. March and April, you need to book ahead. March, I believe there's a supermoon. March and April, historically, really good times for blackfin tunas and wahoo along the reef line. And then we'll start seeing a few mahi start swimming through. So, and also I'm doing a lot of, like I said, I'm doing a lot of mutton snapper fishing, and then vermilions and some yellow eye snappers and all that good stuff. Okay. When's the best time to book in the Florida Keys? I get that question almost every single charter and in most of the emails that I get. So, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, if you really want to work some strategy, you need to booking around the new moons and the full moons. So that's when historically your best tides are, and the fish like to spawn on the moon phases. So that's historically when you should look at booking. Now, if you're looking to book in the month of March, I think the month of March is a supermoon. So, like, say, for example, the month of March, supermoon. A lot of guys say 3 to 4 days ahead of the supermoon, ahead of the full moon. But if it's a supermoon, you should book at least 6 days ahead of time because the moon's going to be bigger and brighter, and the phases kind of change out. So they start biting a little bit earlier in the moon phase. This year, I've seen, since we've had some bigger tides, the fish have been biting a little earlier in the moon phase than like the typical 3 to 4 days. So they tend to bite they've been biting 6 to 7 days ahead of the full moons this year, and then kind of shutting off the closer into like 2 to 3 days. And what's happening now is that you have more people fishing and more boats in the water. So when you put more boats on top of fish like wahoo, especially if you don't have a lot of fish, or if the systems, or if your pressure systems aren't right, or things aren't right as far as the bite, the fish will bite a little bit, but then all of a sudden you put all the boats on top and they shut down. So you got to find fresh fish. You got to work harder. You got to fish locations, try to get away from other boats, but it's tough to do. And I work a little bit of a strategy when it comes to that I'm not going to share. So when I do, and which brings me to, before I get on to the rest of the podcast, I'm going to be reopening my course, my consulting program, again at the end of the month for the month of February. And for those that are interested in really learning the wahoo fishery, I would contact me and get on the list as far as what I've got going on with the program for the month. I think I'm going to do probably about a 6 to 8 week wahoo seminar, and then I'll throw in some mutton snapper fishing in there as well. So we'll just see how it goes. But I'm still working out the details. But if you're interested, please contact me, and I'll send you the information once I get it all put together. And you need to get on the list for that because I do have a waiting list. So just FYI. Okay, moving on. First, I want to thank those guys that have been sending me photos and using my tips. Shout out to Phoenix on Instagram, man. He lives in Bermuda, and he sent me some photos of some nice blackfin tunas that he caught on the Halco Laser Pros, which are my favorite trolling plugs. And it looks like he was running them off a poor man's planer, I call it, or just the standard poor man's planer in Bermuda. And he's on that wahoo mission, just like everybody else out there right now on a who mission. And he said the weather's been tough there, but he's him and his dad are on the right path, and I'll post up some more photos once they catch some. So shout out Phoenix, man. Keep up the hard work, brother, and thanks for the messages. Really appreciate it. And another shout out to Captain Wyatt. Cool story, man. I believe he lives in Naples and runs boats out to the deep Gulf, and he's also a private captain. He works over here on the East Coast as well, does some kite fishing, sail fishing, all that good stuff. And he sent me a direct message a couple months ago saying, hey, man, I really appreciate listening to your podcast, and it's hard to find fishing podcasts, which is really cool. But where I'm going with this, he sent me a picture of some big flag yellowtails that he caught in the Gulf. I was like, wow, man, they're beautiful fish. And then what was cool was the little story that he sent along. So he told me that in the direct message that he was fishing a school and they just wouldn't eat. It happens a lot with yellowtail fishing. It's the guys that are listening to the podcast know. And he said that he was just at the end of his wits, man. He was like getting frustrated, and then he reached and he's like, remember listening to my podcast about using mullet. And mullet is a lethal weapon when the water's colder. So he pulled out some mullet because he remembered listening to my podcast, and he cut up the mullet, started freelining the mullet, and he got the fish to go. And he sent me the pictures, which was cool. These were big flags. They were beautiful fish, man. So, Captain White, I really appreciate you listening, brother, and sending me the photos. And to the rest of you guys out there listening, I'm starting to share some stories on my Instagram account. So if you are looking, I'd love to have you guys send me your success stories, and I'll start sharing them on my Instagram, and which is cool. And also reference the podcast episode as well. I'd really appreciate it. And I really do appreciate the emails that I'm getting from guys all over the country. So thank you guys. It really means a lot. And it gives me this motivation to keep putting out the podcast to the guys that are really getting the information and really do enjoying it. Podcasting is a lot different than YouTube. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, back to the tip. Okay, mullet and yellowtail fishing, winter. Guys, if you're not using pieces of mullet in the wintertime, you're missing out, because mullet in the winter, I want you guys to see that sometimes those fish are going to get so keyed in on your chum on those bright, clear days, and these fish bite differently in the wintertime. So I know a lot of you guys go through it and don't talk about it, but then you only post those days when you have a stellar day when the wind's out of the southeast and the fish are eating behind the boat. But there's days when those fish get balled up under the boat, no current, eating your chum, and you're like, wow, what do I do to get them to bite? So the trick is 12-pound fluorocarbon leader, ultraline line, and you need to use some mullet, okay? Some mullet scraps. Like, look down at your chum, tell me what color that chum is coming out of that bag. A lot of that stuff is mullet, ground mullet in there. So if you're not doing it, give it a try. Let me know how it does, because I'm crushing it on it. So, and it's winter, so I change a lot of stuff around in the winter. And so should you guys if you're really serious about catching fish, especially yellowtails in the winter, because I hear a lot of griping. Oh, my God, I got the yellowtails behind the boat. They won't eat, la, la, la. Well, you're still using summertime tactics, and you're using too much soft chum. You don't overfeed these fish in the winter. So I back off on my soft chum in the winter because they fill up quickly, and I try to use less oats as well. So, and a little tip for you guys, if you guys are tossing your oats in the water right away, especially in the winter, I would like back off on doing that because you spoil them on the good stuff, guys. You're spoiling them on the good stuff. Back off on the oats in the winter. You have to remember that their metabolisms are a lot slower in the wintertime, okay? Fish eat less in the wintertime because their metabolisms are a lot slower. But they're still balled up back there, right? You still see them? So you got to try to match that chum, and that mullet's going to help you catch more. And go with some lighter line. And like I said, I'm using braid, man. I use 40-pound braid on light current days. It sinks at a nice rate. And sometimes I'll go up a little higher, 40 to 50-pound braid, and I'm trying to get I'm matching that flow of that current falling off the back of the boat there. So, and I go with a lighter wire hook, and I cut the bait into squares. I'm sorry, into triangles. Okay. Now, what that does, it slows the fall of the bait. So you have to really match that sink rate of that chum. So you have to play around a little bit. But what I find is on lighter current days, the lighter hook that you use, and you got to cut it into triangles to try to get that sink rate to match the chum. So, and then also I keep the engines running because what that does is it helps me get that bait down. Okay, so I use the prop wash it just acts as a whirlpool, and it sinks that bait into the chum really quick. So if you haven't tried that, give that a try as well. That works very well, especially on light current days. Let that engine make the current for you. It really does help, especially it works. So obviously, okay, so just a little fishing tip there for you. And if you get caught in certain scenarios, dig back into the vault into your brain and refer to the podcast. And that's why I put them out. That's why I put these podcasts out there, to help you be more successful in the water and make the most out of your time and learn from my mistakes to help you save money. Okay. Fishing costs money. So as you guys all know that. All right, guys. So that's it for today. I got to get rolling, get ready for my trips here. Please follow me on Instagram at goodkarmasportfishing_FL_keys if you want to know what's going on daily. And I also throw some tips in the stories on my Instagram now that I don't talk about in the podcast. Email me some ideas, some ideas for topics for this coming year that you guys want me to possibly talk about. If it makes sense, I'll put together a podcast on it. And last but not least, make sure you check out my website, www.goodkarmasportfishing.com, and get signed up for my monthly newsletter. Thanks again for listening, and remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good.